Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this edition of Creating the Future with me, Dr. Brent Simpson, where we dive into stories and truths and deep questions that help us shape our faith, our family, and of course, our future. And we've been in this summer series that is so much fun where you're getting to know our pastors here at Arise. Oftentimes you might see them on the stage. You might hear, in this case, Pastor Pete preaching somewhere as our teaching pastor, but you might not really know him. You don't know his story. You don't know how he grew up, where he came from, how he got saved. And so we want to make sure that we get to answer those questions during this series. And today we welcome Pastor Pete Kramer, our teaching pastor, to be here with us. So
yeah,
you ready?
Glad to be here. I'm ready. Let's
All right,
go.
you're on the hot seat. All right, let's start right off the bat with a fun one. All right,
Okay.
and this is important because you could be excommunicated by people in the church if you answer this poorly. Favorite movie of all time?
Oh man, that's such a hard question. There's so many great movies.
If you name two or three, I won't.
Okay, I would say favorite movie of all time came out early '90s. The Last of the Mohicans, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Okay.
Fantastic.
That is a great movie. That is a
great cinematography, great script, even better soundtrack. It's a great soundtrack if you're studying. Great soundtrack.
Get really intense. While you're studying.
Oh man, it's so intense.
Tomahawks,
it's so good. Throwing tomahawks. It's got everything. It's got action. It's got honor. It's got love. It's got adventure. It's just a great movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great.
So that's number. Did you have any others you were throwing in there?
I mean, if I had to pick a dumb guy movie, because I'm a product of the 80s and 90s, Tommy Boy would be up there, just for the sake of dumb guy movie.
Yeah, I could totally, yes. We're not that far off in age. So, all right, let's go there. So you're talking about growing up. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, man. I grew up in a little tiny town called Carlinville, Illinois. Little town is surrounded in every direction by 50 miles of corn, soybeans, and cows.
Wow.
If we were going to the city, we were going to either St. Louis or Springfield, Illinois. Lived basically halfway between those two.
How long did it take you to get to one of those?
It was about an hour each direction.
So you're an hour into the middle of nowhere.
An hour into the middle of nowhere. So, I joke with people. I'll say, how many people have ever been to Illinois? A couple hands, right? How many of you have ever flown over Illinois? So it's like a lot more people have flown.
I pictured Little House on the Prairie. So you were like Charles Ingalls' neighbors.
It was kind of like that. Yeah, you almost find my hometown accidentally, because it's off the beaten path. But yeah, it was great. So the youngest of three boys. My mom and dad loved Jesus, raised in a Christian home. A lot of ups and downs, financially, emotionally, that sort of thing. But God was always good and faithful. Our home church was a saving grace for us. Yeah. I'm a product of the van ministry, if anybody remembers van ministry in church. So the bus came and picked us up every Sunday and Wednesday, and we went to church. And so that was very meaningful to me.
Yeah, I love that. So what were you like? If we could see Pete Kramer as a teenager, who were you as a teenager? Or do we just need to look at your son, right? Because he's right
Yeah. Look at any of my kids who are my mini-me's. But I don't know if I have the emotional intelligence to assess myself appropriately. You might have to ask my dad, because how I see myself and how the world saw me might be two different things. But I was constantly involved in things in the church. Man, I loved serving in youth ministry and that sort of thing. And I was homeschooled too. So I had all kinds of time on my hands. So I was constantly serving at the church, pouring gravel in the parking lot or painting walls or whatever, just kind of whatever it was to do.
Free labor,
Yeah, I love doing it, man. Stacking chairs, whatever, everybody got to stack chairs at some point,
Showing off for the girls, how many chairs.
Yeah, look at all these chairs, ladies. And I married none of them, like none of them wanted anything to do with me. So which is okay, that's fine. I mean, as a teenager, I was a tall, gangly kid. I should say I wasn't tall till later, because a lot of people will meet me and be like, "Oh my goodness!" I'm like, "I know, I work in the circus. Like, look at this."
How tall are you, just for?
So I'm 6'4".
Okay.
And I tell people I have to be careful when I cry because it'll snow on my shoes. Just don't. I have all these dumb jokes for this, but what's funny is I really didn't hit a growth spurt until I was after 16. So if you see my first driver's license, which I've got somewhere, I have to see if I can find it. On my first driver's license, I was like 5'9" and 190 pounds.
Wow.
So I was like,
you hit that late. Yeah.
I was like the size of this coffee cup. I looked just like that. And then just hit this growth spurt, thinned out, and it was kind of crazy. But Yeah, I was always kind of goofing around though. I've
Yeah.
always been a joke teller, love making
Right.
people laugh. So I was
right.
kind of that kid.
So you're the homeschool church kid, like we have a bunch of them here right now, right? We're
Yeah.
filming this in the summer. We got all these interns here. They just got a new, I heard this term, don't anybody get offended at this, but there's one of them that's following around the interns. They're not official because they're too young to be an intern, and they called her the ghetto intern, and they're the intern to the intern. So the interns are making them do work this summer. So you were that
That's
kid.
awesome.
You were just going around doing whatever. Just
I
love
was
being
kind
at
of
the church.
that kid, yeah, just floating around.
Yeah.
You know, my older brothers were doing stuff, and so I wanted to do what they were
Right,
doing, and so yeah, I always kind of trended older. I liked hanging out with like old people. Here's one thing that's kind of cool. My home church, there's a retirement community near my home church that's loaded with retired Assembly of God missionaries, pastors, teachers, preachers, and they all then attended my church and were my Sunday school teachers.
Right.
So like my Sunday school teachers were like retired missionaries to Africa back in the early 1900s, you know,
awesome.
and just had all these cool stories, and you know, they served in our youth ministry. We had an 85-year-old lady named Sister Ann. We called her Sister Ann. That's how we talked, you know. And she's 85 years old. She served in our youth group in the cafe, you know. But she loved teenagers, and she was great, you know. But her and her husband faithfully pastored for like 45 years, you know. And so it was cool to have that. So, I have such a weird kind of upbringing in this location and where I was in life,
No, that's awesome. All right, so you're the church kid, but how and when did you actually give your life to Christ?
Yeah, so only God knows. Because what's funny is on any kind of application, whether it was to Bible college or for ministry credentials or schools or whatever the case may be, they always ask the question, you know, what was your date of salvation?
Right.
I have this like underlying fear that someday somebody's going to gather up all of these applications from the past and line them out. None of the dates will line up because I haven't got a clue, man. I was, you know, born and raised in church, so the date that I use often is the date that I was baptized, and that was February 6th of 1992. Okay. And so I will often use that date as my salvation date. Yeah. I always knew the Lord. I had the benefit of my mom and dad praying over us and, you know, constantly talking about theology and the scripture. So that was a beautiful benefit now, looking back on it now, like, wow, how blessed I was to have that. And so, but when it really got real was about that time. Yeah, I would have been 8 years old at that point. That's awesome. And then constantly, as you grow from glory to glory, man, there was several moments in my high school years where I just met God in a very dramatic, life-altering sort of way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, maybe that's part of the next question. So what was your call to ministry? How did you... You know, is it one of those things like the circus kid that you get left at the circus, you just join the circus?
Yeah, it was.
You were always at the church. We just eventually just bring you into the church. You know?
That's a great question because that call to ministry was formed in that way, was just by serving.
Right.
And so if my youth pastor needed something, it's like, yeah, man, I'll do it. You know, if the church offered any ministry, I was part of a Royal Rangers Bible quiz, all these other things that were very formative to my understanding of faith, you know, that sort of thing. But then there came this point where I was at a Royal Ranger camp out when I was 11 years old that I clearly sensed. It's one of maybe the 6 times in my life where I'm like, man, that was the voice of God. Yeah. Like nearly audible, you know, where it was, you know, I can remember the time now is I rose up David and he served. I raised up Moses and he served, Abraham and he served, and Paul and he served, and I want to raise you up. Yeah. Now I'm not trying to put myself into place of Paul and Moses and David or anything. Right. But it was, I brought somebody up, they did their thing, you know, and I just remember that word being so clear to me. And what was cool was 2 years ago, I went back to that same campground, to that place out in the woods where that altar was, and I got to take my son there, and I prayed with him and just told him, man, really you need to have moments like this in your life. So that call then started. Then it's weird because a lot of kids in my hometown got their first job at the dairy. The dairy was the big employer.
That says something about where you're at. Okay?
Right, yeah. The dairy was the big one. Or
the big employers, the local dairy.
You were making cash under the table working for a farmer, you know. Or you were working at Dairy Queen, which both of my brothers worked at Dairy Queen. And my first job was working, this is so silly when I say this out loud, it's kind of goofy. My first job at 15 years old, was working in the youth department for the Illinois Assemblies of God.
Yeah.
At 15 years old, I don't know what they were thinking. You know,
Right,
they just like hire this kid.
Right.
And I was
illegal?
doing video work because nobody was doing video in like 1998. You know, so like you know, so like I'm doing video work and I'm traveling around to schools and churches and capturing video. And so with all of that, that all just formed into my calling, and I just knew that serving Jesus through the local church was going to be my life. Yeah. And I knew that for sure, concrete, by about 15.
That's so cool. How many years have you been in ministry?
Oh,
and that's a tough one, because when would you even count starting?
Yeah.
Because you were doing, at 15, you're already making videos and stuff for the...
Yeah. I don't know if I would count that. Those were formative, and those were very much pour into years, where if I was thinking of ministry as pour out years, it would be 17 years in ministry now.
Yeah.
18 years old, got my first job as a youth pastor. I was a terrible youth pastor. I was 18. Number one, I was 18.
You're still a youth.
I was still a youth. I just had a birthday, and they're like, "All right, you're the youth pastor now." And that was formative, and that was great. And I was there for 2 years, and then went to Bible college. And then, after Bible college, so all together, cumulatively, like 17, 18 years.
So you're almost an adult in ministry now.
Yeah, almost.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what surprised you in that course of time about being in ministry? What surprised you most?
Oh man, I think everybody kind of has an idealistic expectation. We do this all the time in marriage and life and with our job or our car or whatever. Thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna pray and read the Bible all the time and preach all the time. And then you realize that ministry is so much pour out, and there has to be pour in.
Right.
And I think that's what surprised me, is just how much of a emotional toll, not so much even a physical toll, even though there are days where you physically work hard, but the emotional and spiritual toll. And if you don't intentionally pour into that, you're just not going to make it, you know?
Right.
And so I've tried to have a rhythm of that, especially the last 15 years, have a rhythm of intentionally pouring into my personal relationship with Jesus, so that way I don't exhaust it all in the field. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that surprised me. The other thing that surprised me is how much dumpsters cost. Nobody ever talks about this in Bible college or seminary. A lot of
those kind of things.
And you certainly can't cover all of this in Bible college. But for a brief period of time, I was a lead pastor, and one of the very first things I had to address was the cost of a dumpster. I had no idea dumpsters were so expensive.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I hope you are enjoying today's show, but let me take a quick time out to remind you to like and subscribe. It helps us get this content out to so many more people, as well as do me a favor and leave a comment. I always enjoy reading your comments every single week. Now, let's jump right back into this great conversation.
Eating up so much of our monthly budget, and I'm like, we have got to do something about this. And so I spent a lot of time working on a dumpster. Never thought I would do that, but
that's awesome. All right, since those 17 years or 18, whatever, what is one moment you'll never forget in ministry?
Yeah, so super long story short was God dramatically healed our middle son. Mason was born with a terminal condition called cystic fibrosis. At 10 months old, completely healed, symptom-free, unbelievable third world country kind of miracle situation, to where his whole physical demeanor, his look, everything changed. Up to that point, there had been a guy that was attending our church. We were pastoring in Kansas at this time. There was a guy attending our church, and the reason he was attending is because his wife started attending our church. She gave her life to Jesus, but he was very resistant to the gospel because he had been a Buddhist monk for 30 years. Now, man, I thought Buddhists were peaceful people, but this guy, man, constantly wanted to argue.
Really?
And I was getting to the place where I'm like, I might have to ask him to leave the church, because he was just draining the life out of me.
Yeah.
And I said, I just finally got to this place with him. I said, man, what is it going to take for you to give up all your Buddhist stuff and just serve Jesus alone? And he said, I would need to see a miracle I can't explain. I said, man, I'm going to be praying for that. A couple of months later, God healed Mason of cystic fibrosis, which is a lung condition predominantly. Well, this guy, by trade, as a living, is a respiratory therapist and deals with patients who have cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
And if he had any tender space in his heart, it was for our son because he knew our son's condition. That was the only kind of tender area he had towards me hey, how's your son doing? After God healed our son, that became a huge catalyst for him. He calls me like 3 days later. It's in February. He calls me 3 days after we have this conversation about, he was one of the first people I told, I should say, that God had healed Mason. 3 days later, he calls me. He says, I want to get baptized. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? And he said, I was driving down Gage Boulevard in Topeka, Kansas, and the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, burn all your Buddhism stuff and serve Jesus.
Wow.
So he immediately drove home, got the trash barrel, threw all of it in there, burned it, and then said, I want to get baptized. Well, we were pastoring in a triple wide modular building in the winter. We didn't have a baptism tank and it was too cold to baptize outside. So at our small group on a Tuesday night, we gathered about 25 people into our bathroom. We filled up our bathtub and we baptized him in our bathtub.
That's so awesome.
It was just a cool, I will never forget that.
Praise God. Yeah, we need to have the story of your son being healed. We need to do that on a whole nother podcast because I know that story. Yeah. It's so amazing.
It's so great.
We need to have that where we can just focus on that alone. That's an amazing testimony.
It was so cool.
Yeah. All right, so how did you end up at Arise?
Yeah, man, that's a wild question. You know, independently in 2019, the Lord spoke to my wife and I both and asked us to step out of our very comfortable, thriving ministry that we had over on the other coast and here in Florida. Great relationship with the church, great relationship with the pastor, but just felt like the Lord spoke to both of us and said, I want to move you into another role. So we just thought, okay, you know, I'm not a musician, so it's not music ministry. I'm not a kids guy. I guess it's not kids ministry. I guess we're going to be lead pastors. And so we took on a challenge of being lead pastors of a local church. And, you know, it was a rough time.
It was crazy.
It was a rough time. God was so faithful. Things were good in my family, my kids, my wife. That was all good. But things in the church were really tense. And I needed help. And so I called Terry Rayburn, our district superintendent, and said, help. And he said, what great leaders do. He redirected me to my presbyter. He said, you need to call Brent Simpson.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to Brent Simpson and said, man, I'm struggling here. Can you help me out? And so you did. You were very gracious to me and helped me navigate a lot of that. And then through the course of that, knew that my time in ministry there was over. I don't know if you remember this, because you and I were sitting up one night after a very tense board meeting. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. And you said, if I had an opening at Arise right now, I'd hire you right now.
And it was true.
I'll be honest. I thought you were just being nice because I was crying, you know, and I was like, oh, he's just trying to be nice, you know, whatever. And then, and I thought, okay, that's good. So we packed up all of our belongings, moved in with our in-laws. We were with our in-laws for a couple of months. It was during COVID and the world was just crazy. And so we took a position at a church in Pennsylvania. And I was in Pennsylvania for about 3 months when you called me and said, hey, I know you just moved to Pennsylvania, but is there any way you would move back here? And I initially said no. You know, we had signed a 2-year lease on a house. I'm like, I can't get out of this lease and everything. And then through the tenacity of Pastor Brent saying, yeah, I don't know if I take no for an answer, and texting back and forth and exchanging messages. I remember my wife and I were at Niagara Falls and we're looking at the falls, and you and I had been texting and Marco Poloing messages and stuff, and just in that moment knew that we were coming back to Florida. Mm-hmm. And so at Niagara Falls, we're like, we're moving back to Florida. And so we went back and just started to pray, God, all of these obligations that we're in, you know, with the church that we were on staff at, the pastor there was super gracious, was very kind to us. In fact, I saw him a couple of months ago and I reminded him of that and just thanked him for his graciousness to us to follow God's leading back to Florida. The landlord completely let us out of our lease without penalty. So that was amazing.
That's a miracle unto itself.
Yeah. It was great. And so we're like, okay, this is the will of the Lord. And so after 5 months in Pennsylvania, we moved back to Florida, and we've been back here now just over 5 years.
So good. So 5 years you've been back here. So when you came, let me back up real fast and just say to like, I was serious when I said that to you, because I think very, very highly of you. And I watched what you went through with that church when you were there, and watched how you handled it, both with your character, your intelligence, just who you were. And I'm like, man, this guy's awesome. And this church doesn't realize what they have here and what because they didn't want to change, and that's a whole nother subject for another day. But they didn't realize what you were, and I'm like, man, I got to get this guy on my team. I would hire you. Then when you came, you were connection pastor first, so you helped connect people. Then you became the South Shore when we had our South Shore location pastor, and now you're the teaching pastor. Yeah. Just a real quick snippet for anybody watching, because they might only see you come in and teach from time to time. Right. What do you do? What is in the short answer, because what you do in ministry is never ending.
Right. Yeah.
Any given day, it could be anything, but
absolutely. So a couple of different hats in that umbrella of teaching pastor is groups are a big part of my ministry, and so now fully in the driver's seat of groups here for all of our locations. ASOM, or Rise School of Ministry, helping people answer God's call in their life, which is super fun. Yeah. I oversee care and counseling, so our care and counseling center. And with that is pastoral care as well. Right. So if people are grieving, going through those big life transitions, grieving, death, dying, and marriage is part of that too. That's not a grief, that's a good thing. But overseeing and helping build some structure to that as well. And then part of that too is our midweek Bible study, helping oversee that and bringing in teachers and giving some continuity for that. And then being on the preaching team. Right. So quite a bit going on there, but so much fun to be able to jump around to different locations and preach. And that's kind of the short version. Yeah.
So love it. What do you love most about serving at Arise?
Oh man, I have never been more challenged to grow in the last 5 years than I have probably since my calling. You know how, like, just in human conception, from the moment of conception to birth, there's an amazing amount of transformation that the baby goes through in the womb, and then after that you see the slow progression as they grow and get older, but that first 9 months there's an incredible amount of growth, and I would say in the last 5 years, just growing and stretching and being challenged, and I would say that's probably it. Also, just kind of getting to have a front row seat to life transformation and seeing people go from here to there in their walk with Jesus. That's awesome. Like, that never gets old, man. Right. Those are the highlights. Those are the highlights.
Yeah. Okay, if you could sit down with one person at Arise and you're going to have coffee and get to know them and they're going to get to know you, what do you hope they know about you when they walk away?
Yeah, I hope they know that what they see on the platform is the same guy that they see in the coffee shop. Yeah. And that I'm passionate about being a disciple of Jesus. Like, I of all of our values, and I love our values, I love the value of growth, because really when we grow, that causes a hunger for the things of God. It causes a hunger for the word, a hunger for prayer, a hunger for worship. And so I hope that they see, like, I genuinely do love the Lord. And while I'm not perfect and we're all figuring this out as we go along, I hope that that's something they're inspired by, that they're inspired to be a follower of Jesus and to daily love the Lord.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. I love that. All right, one final conclusion question. This might just be a fun one. What is one thing that most people don't know about you that if they found out would surprise them?
Wow, that is really interesting.
If I were guessing, so I'm not doing this to anybody else, but I just know you.
Yeah.
I think you're going to say you're Royal Rangers, that you were a whatever Golden Scout, supercharged, turbo, golden whatever Royal Ranger.
I mean, if they understand the subculture. So I did. I got my gold medal of achievement in Royal Rangers.
You're like one of that top elite 1% Royal Rangers.
Yeah. Loved it. Loved Royal Rangers. The Royal Ranger commanders I had growing up were like second dads to me. So that was
if
really
anybody
cool.
who's watching that doesn't know, Royal Rangers is the discipleship ministry for young boys. It's kind of like a Christian Boy Scout.
Yeah, there you go. I'm glad you gave that caveat there. So that one might be one. I'm weirdly good with a yo-yo. I usually have a yo-yo. I used to carry a yo-yo in my bag. Right. I'm weirdly good with a yo-yo.
I did not know that. Okay.
Did you? Oh, no, man. I do all kinds of dumb stuff with yo-yos, ups and downs and everything. And then a lot of people don't know this, but I am fluent in sign language, but I can't read sign language. And so a part of that is my mom was deaf, so completely deaf. So we use sign language to communicate with her, but she spoke back to us. So I can sign, but I can't read sign, which is kind of a weird thing.
That is funny. I
have all these like weird little things that I do that people go, "Oh, what, you do that?" I'm like, I'm not great at it, but I do it. So.
Well, Pastor Pete, this has been so good. I love every time I'm with you, I get better. You just make me better.
Thanks, man.
And I'm so glad you're on our team. I'm glad you're part of Arise. I'm glad you're part of my life personally. And so let's just continue to see what God does with you here. Everybody who's watching, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment. If you got a question for Pastor Pete, I'm sure he'd love to answer your question or respond to your question in your comments. And then maybe there's somebody you want to share this with who might benefit from hearing Pastor Pete's story as well. All right, God bless you guys. Look forward to seeing you next week when we look and share the story of another one of our pastors.